What if I told you that on the coldest night of winter, two babies were left to freeze in a car for 14 hours, while their mother was just 50 feet away, getting high with her boyfriend? This isn't a story about an accident. This isn't about a moment of poor judgment. This is about a mother who looked at her 3- and 4-year-old children, handed them crackers and water, and said, "Mommy will be right back," knowing she wouldn't be. When police found those babies, their lips were blue, their tiny bodies rigid from the cold, barely clinging to life. And when they arrested Kimberly James, her excuse will make your blood run cold. "I gave them food, I gave them water, I left the car running." That's it. That's what she told officers, as if snacks and an idling engine were enough to justify abandoning 2 toddlers in freezing temperatures while she disappeared for an entire night. But here's what's really disturbing. This wasn't Kimberly's first time making headlines. This wasn't her first time leaving others to deal with the consequences. And the man who was with her that night? When police questioned him, his response was so callous, so heartless, that it dominated news coverage for weeks. So how does a 28-year-old mother of 4 become the center of a case that nearly claimed 2 innocent lives? What drove her to make the choices she made? And what role did grief, loss, and a toxic relationship play in the events that followed? And today we're diving deep into one of the most disturbing cases of child endangerment I've ever covered. Because the more you learn about Kimberly James, the harder it becomes to understand how someone could be so reckless with the lives of their own children. Before we begin, subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon, and also need to warn you, this story will challenge everything you think you know about motherhood, responsibility, and the choices we make when we think nobody's watching. But someone was watching that night, and what they saw changed everything. Let's get into it. Before her identity became a news story, Kimberly James was simply another young woman maturing in St. Louis, Missouri. Brought up on religious values, discipline, and the quiet resilience of a single mother who believed affection could remedy anything. Her mother, Patricia James, was a devout woman, traditional, the kind who donned conservative clothing, offered prayers before dining, and maintained a Bible on the living room table that showed more wear than the furniture cushions. She raised Kimberly with strict schedules, household duties, education, evening meal at 6 o'clock, sleep by 10 o'clock. For a period, it functioned. As a youngster, Kimberly was reserved, well-mannered. Her instructor said she demonstrated promise. Sharp with literature, skilled with mathematics, intelligent when she concentrated, but by age 13 the transformation began. She became restless, easily sidetracked, less focused on academics, more attracted to recognition. She began wearing more revealing clothing, playing loud music, dismissing Patricia's regulations. By 16, she had one foot toward the exit. And at 17, she abandoned high school entirely. Patricia was crushed. She attempted reasoning with her. "Complete what you began, sweetheart. You're too intelligent to discard this opportunity." But Kimberly was indifferent. She desired to feel mature, and nothing made her feel more adult than Brandon, an older gentleman from nearby. He wasn't extravagant, but he possessed a vehicle, employment at an auto shop, and a charming voice that made her feel significant. Patricia wasn't enthusiastic, but Brandon was courteous and respectful. He appeared for dinner, collected Kimberly punctually. For a while it appeared things might stabilize. Then, pregnancy arrived. At 18, Kimberly delivered her first son, Malik. Brandon remained present. He contributed, assisted with diapers, obtained medication, even soothed the baby during nighttime. It was challenging, but it appeared they were managing. At 19, their second son, Tylen, was born, 2 boys under 2 years. Still young, still learning. But Kimberly didn't mature into motherhood as Brandon anticipated. She began withdrawing. She'd leave Patricia with the boys momentarily to visit the store, but return 4 hours later, smelling of alcohol and flavored tobacco. Her clothing became tighter, her phone conversations more secretive. She started vanishing on weekends, claiming she was relieving stress. Patricia intervened once more. She fed the boys, bathed them, awakened during the night when they cried. Kimberly would be elsewhere, laughing with companions while her mother comforted the babies in darkness. Brandon observed he attempted communicating with her. "You cannot continue abandoning them. They require you." Kimberly would dismiss him. "Calm down. I just need a break." "I'm still present, aren't I?" But being around wasn't equivalent to being engaged, and Brandon recognized it. At merely 21, Kimberly had exhausted education, 2 children, and a relationship with the only man who ever attempted to help her succeed. All that remained was Patricia, and even that wouldn't endure forever. After Brandon departed, Kimberly assumed he'd calm down and return. He had done it previously, stormed out following an argument, only to return a day or two later, quiet and exhausted, as if nothing occurred. But this time, he only contacted, asking about his children, and sent them money for food and clothing. What Kimberly didn't realize was that Brandon wasn't just angry, he was finished. And this time, he possessed evidence. For years, he had observed Kimberly drift away from their children. Not suddenly, but gradually. She missed school, conferences, left the boys at Patricia's without notice, was caught lying about her whereabouts. Some evenings she didn't return home. Brandon had been patient too long. And Brandon wouldn't be a witness to the destruction anymore. So he began documenting. He maintained a file, preserved text messages, saved pictures from Kimberly's Instagram, where she purchased new clothes for herself while their sons wore footwear with holes. He obtained statements from Patricia, from teachers, from neighbors. He wasn't attempting to destroy Kimberly. He was trying to protect Malik and Tylen, now ages 9 and 10, and he knew the court wouldn't listen to accusations. He needed evidence. So he constructed a case. When Brandon filed for complete custody, Kimberly laughed. "Best of luck with that," she told him. "No judge will take my children." But internally, she was uncertain. She had stopped checking in, stopped appearing, stopped pretending to be the mother everyone hoped she'd become. The court date arrived, and Kimberly didn't even appear for the first hearing. She claimed she overslept. The judge rescheduled, giving a second opportunity. At the second hearing, Kimberly arrived late, wearing a wrinkled sweatshirt and torn pants. She appeared exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days, or like she simply didn't care. Brandon, conversely, appeared in a dress shirt with copies of everything: attendance records, photographs, statements, and witness letters. He maintained his composure. He spoke clearly, respectfully. Then Patricia testified. Her voice broke as she spoke. "I love my daughter, but I won't lie. I've raised those boys since birth. She comes and goes. She disappears for days. I do my best." The room became silent. Even Kimberly looked away. The judge didn't deliberate long. Full custody granted to Brandon. The boys were to relocate out of state with him immediately. Kimberly would receive supervised visitation if she requested it. She never did. Kimberly said, "It's simpler this way." He wanted them so desperately, now he has them. No emotion, no remorse, just indifference. But her behavior afterward revealed a different story. With the boys gone, Kimberly became reckless. Her evenings extended longer, her phone calls shorter, her drinking increased. She started meeting new men online, taking late-night drives, and disappearing into apartments no one had seen before. Patricia watched the shift occur in real time. There were mornings Kimberly didn't return home. Other mornings, when she came in with smeared makeup and smelled of cheap cologne, she stopped inquiring about the boys, stopped calling Brandon, stopped pretending to care. Then came the third pregnancy. She didn't tell anyone initially. Her stomach began to show, but she dismissed questions. "Just gaining weight," she said. But by the time the baby bump was undeniable, the father had already vanished. They had met at a party. He had a car, paid for drinks, spent 3 nights consecutively at her place, then disappeared. She didn't even have a surname for the birth certificate. When her daughter Ari was born, Patricia stepped in again. She set up a crib in her bedroom, bought formula, comforted the baby at 2 a.m., while Kimberly slept through it all. It was déjà vu. But this time Patricia was older, slower, tired, her knees hurt, her back ached, but she didn't complain. Then came baby number 4. Same story, different man. No help, no plan. By now, Kimberly was 30 years old, had 4 children, and only 2 still living under her roof. She had no job, no ambition, no plan to change. She lived off government assistance, SNAP, WIC, Section 8, and relied on Patricia to fill in every gap she left behind. She still partied, still wore tight outfits, still posted selfies with captions like, "Mama still got it, no stress, just vibes." But behind closed doors, it was anything but vibes. Her apartment was messy, her refrigerator half empty. The babies often wore mismatched clothes, their hair unkempt, their voices too quiet for their age. Patricia tried to hold it all together. She begged Kimberly to return to school, to learn a trade, to get help. But the words bounced off. "They're fine," Kimberly would say. "Stop worrying so much." But they weren't fine, and neither was she. Kimberly had released everything, her boys, her chances, her peace. And now all she had left were broken relationships and 2 babies she barely cared for. Patricia did what she could, but she was getting tired. Her body wasn't built to raise more children. Her heart wasn't built to keep breaking. And the worst part, no one could make Kimberly see it. Not Brandon, not Patricia, not even her kids. She drifted through life like it was happening to someone else. Unbothered, unaccountable, and completely unprepared for the storm that was still coming. In the end, Patricia James left this world the way she had lived in it, quietly, humbly, and without asking anyone for anything. It happened in late autumn. The leaves had already fallen. The wind was sharp, and Patricia, now in her early 60s, had been complaining about headaches and chest tightness for weeks. But she didn't go to the hospital, not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't want to burden anyone. That was just the kind of woman she was. She kept pushing, kept rocking babies, kept cooking meals, kept praying until one afternoon, as she folded laundry in the kitchen, she collapsed. No warning, no farewell. A neighbor found her when she didn't answer the door. The paramedics arrived quickly and rushed her to the hospital. She was still breathing, but barely. For 2 days, Patricia fought for her life in the ICU, tubes, monitors, machines humming in the background. And during those 2 days, Kimberly never showed up. She knew her mother was in the hospital. Word spread quickly in their neighborhood. The same neighbor who found Patricia had called Kimberly's phone 3 times. She didn't answer. When she finally called back, her response was cold. "I don't have transportation. And what can I do anyway? Y'all said she's unconscious." That was it. No tears, no rush to be by her mother's side, no urgency. Instead, Kimberly stayed where she was, 3 neighborhoods away, sitting on a friend's couch, scrolling through her phone, while the only person who ever truly stood by her lay in a hospital bed, fighting for breath. 2 days later, Patricia passed away. A massive stroke. She didn't wake up, didn't open her eyes, didn't get a chance to say goodbye, and when the hospital called to inform the family, they couldn't even reach Kimberly directly. The neighbor had to break the news. Her reaction was flat. "Damn, that's crazy." She said, "I guess she really gone." She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't even ask which hospital she had been in. But the part that stunned everyone the most, she didn't have a single dollar to help with the funeral. Patricia had been paying all the bills. Her Social Security check covered rent. Her savings went to groceries, baby formula, utility bills, and Kimberly, though she lived in the same house, had contributed nothing. So when it came time to bury her, it wasn't Kimberly who stepped up. It was the church and the neighbors. The same people who watched Patricia carry her family for years passed a donation plate around during Sunday service. They organized a small, quiet funeral, simple casket, modest service, Nothing flashy, just love, respect, and sorrow. On the day of the funeral, Kimberly showed up 30 minutes late, wearing a tight black dress, large sunglasses, and heels too high for the wet grass in the churchyard. She didn't speak, didn't help carry the casket, didn't even sit with the family. She stood off to the side, arms folded, chewing gum, staring off into the distance like she had somewhere else to be. People whispered. They always had, but now they didn't bother hiding it. She didn't even visit her mama in the hospital. She hasn't shed a single tear. Patricia gave that girl everything, and look how she repays her. After the burial, while others stood around sharing stories and comforting one another, Kimberly walked away without a word. She went straight home. And that night, she sold her mother's television. Then, the next day, the microwave. Then the couch. Then the jewelry box. Within a week, everything in the house that had belonged to Patricia, everything she had worked for, saved, cleaned, protected, was gone. Sold for quick cash. She didn't even ask the family, didn't wait for anyone to come by. She just posted it online and watched it disappear piece by piece. The refrigerator was half empty, the bedrooms hollow, the curtains gone. Patricia's home, the place that once smelled like fresh linen and cornbread, was now cold, quiet, and stripped bare. And with her gone, there was no one left to hold Kimberly accountable. So, she unraveled. At first, it was small things. She started leaving the kids alone more often, just for an hour, then 2, then a whole afternoon. The neighbors heard the toddlers crying through the window, sometimes screaming. One day, someone knocked on the door for 10 minutes before a small voice answered from inside. "Mommy not home." She stopped cooking meals, let the dishes pile up, forgot appointments, missed WIC pickups. She slept all day, partied all night, let her phone go to voicemail for days at a time, and when someone asked how she was doing, she'd say, "I'm good, just trying to breathe." But breathing wasn't the issue. The issue was that she'd never learned how to stand alone. Patricia had been her crutch, her babysitter, her bill payer, her voice of reason. And now, with no one there to catch her, Kimberly was in free fall. The house turned into a shell. The kids wore stained clothes. The lights got cut off more than once. She borrowed from everyone and paid back no one. Some days she had a man over. Other days she was completely gone. And through it all, no one really knew what was going on inside her. Not because they didn't care, but because Kimberly stopped letting anyone in. And the saddest part, no one could stop what was coming next. It was a Thursday afternoon when Kimberly James met Sean Rick. She was standing outside a gas station, scrolling through her phone while her youngest cried in the back seat. She barely looked up when a man walked past her and doubled back. "You good, Mom?" he asked with a smirk. His name was Sean, but he liked to be called Rick. He was 31, tall, with a deep voice and a confident walk. The kind of man who could talk his way through anything, even with nothing to his name. Kimberly looked him up and down. He wasn't clean-cut, didn't have a car, said he was between jobs. But he had a street-smart edge, charisma mixed with just enough danger to make her curious. They stood there talking for 20 minutes while her toddler cried himself to sleep in the car. Kimberly laughed at Sean's jokes, blushed when he complimented her tattoos, and gave him her number before driving away. By the next evening, he was sitting on her couch. Sean didn't waste time. He asked for rides, asked to borrow her charger, asked what was in the refrigerator. By the third visit, he was sleeping over, and by the end of 2 weeks, he had moved in. No job, no rent, no responsibilities, just a change of address. Kimberly didn't seem to care. She liked having someone around, someone who texted her, "Good morning," who said things like, "You deserve better than what you've been through," and she believed him. She posted pictures of them on social media, selfies with filters, captions like, "Real one by my side, y'all mad I'm happy." What she didn't post were the nights they left the kids behind, sometimes with a neighbor, sometimes with snacks, juice boxes, and the TV volume cranked up, sometimes with no one. They'd be out for hours drinking, smoking, laying up in someone else's apartment laughing, living. Meanwhile, Ari and her little brother were at home, unsupervised, two toddlers in a quiet house with no one checking on them, and Sean, he didn't care. From the start, he called the kids loud, whiny, needy. He told Kimberly she was too soft on them, that they were always crying for no reason. He never picked them up, never changed a diaper, never fixed a plate of food. If Ari spilled something, he'd curse. If her brother cried too long, he'd leave the room. But Kimberly didn't push back. She laughed it off, said the kids were just going through a phase, and Sean, he made her feel seen. He complimented her body, rolled her blunts, told her she was too good to be stuck raising kids alone, so she chose him over structure, over safety, over sense. The people around her started noticing again. The same neighbor who helped bury Patricia saw Sean come and go at all hours. She watched Kimberly put her kids in the car late at night and not return until morning. She saw the garbage pile up, the kids' clothes always wrinkled, their shoes always too small, but no one could say anything because Kimberly didn't want to hear it. She had a new man, a new distraction, a new reason to ignore everything else, and that reason was about to push her over the edge. It was a bitter night in February, one of those nights where the air bites at your skin the moment you step outside. Wind whistled through the quiet streets of North St. Louis, and the sky hung low and gray, threatening another dusting of snow. For most families, it was a night to stay in, to keep warm, to be together. But for Kimberly James, it was the beginning of something far more chilling than the temperature outside. Inside a small apartment, Kimberly zipped up her puffy pink jacket. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun, and her eyes were heavy, lined with a mix of fatigue and frustration. On the couch, 3-year-old Tristan was drifting in and out of sleep, while 4-year-old Ari clutched a thin blanket, watching cartoons with a blank stare. They were used to nights like this, unpredictable, unplanned, and centered around whatever Kimberly wanted. Sean Rick, 31, lean, street-smart, and full of swagger, was pacing near the front door. He'd just gotten off the phone with his old friend Tay, who lived on the other side of town. Tay had a small apartment and was known for letting people crash when they needed a place. Sean smirked as he tucked his phone into his jacket. He said, "Come through," he told Kimberly. Said, "We got the place to ourselves tonight." Kimberly didn't hesitate. She looked at the clock. It was almost 8 p.m. The kids had just eaten a quick dinner of microwave noodles. She walked into the kitchen, grabbed a Ziploc bag of crackers, 2 plastic bottles filled with water, and a single faded blanket. "Come on, y'all," she said, nudging the kids. "We going for a ride." Ari and Tristan didn't ask where. They rarely did. Their lives had become a blur of movement. Late-night car rides, unfamiliar places, and long hours waiting. They followed her to the car without complaint. Kimberly drove the old gray sedan through icy streets while Sean rolled a blunt beside her. The car's heater buzzed loudly, doing its best to push back the creeping cold. The kids sat quietly in the back, wrapped in their coats, too tired to speak. When they reached the apartment complex, it was nearly dark. A lone porch light flickered above Tay's unit on the second floor. Kimberly parked under a broken streetlight out of view from the main road. She turned to the back seat. "Y'all be good, okay?" she said, tucking the blanket around them. "Don't open the door. Mommy will be right back." Ari blinked slowly. Tristan yawned. They were used to this, too. Kimberly left the engine running, the heat still blowing, and stepped out into the cold with Sean. They made their way upstairs, and Tay greeted them with a nod before disappearing into the back room. The apartment smelled of cheap air freshener and cannabis. A futon in the corner served as the main furniture. Kimberly dropped her bag and flopped down beside Sean. Finally, she sighed. Some peace. Despite living together, Kimberly and Sean never truly had time alone. The kids, the noise, the mess. It was always something. Tonight was their chance to unwind. They lit up, passed drinks back and forth, and put on a playlist that echoed through the thin walls. Soon they were curled up on the futon, whispering, laughing, tangled in each other's arms. The haze took over, and the world outside disappeared. The intimacy they craved had become an escape, a way to forget the burden of parenting, poverty, and pain. Even though the children were only a few feet away, in the car, in the cold, their minds were far removed from responsibility. It wasn't just physical closeness they sought, it was emotional detachment from everything that had gone wrong. Hours passed. They fell asleep wrapped in each other, their clothes scattered across the floor, the blunt long burned out, and the music now soft background noise. Meanwhile, the children waited. At first, the car stayed warm. The windows fogged gently, and the kids dozed off in the back seat. But as the hours passed, the gas gauge inched lower. The heater sputtered, blowing cooler air each time. The frost returned to the windows. The night deepened. By 2 a.m., the temperature outside had dropped to the low 20s. The car's engine clicked and then fell silent. The heater gave one last breath before shutting off. Inside the car, Ari shifted, waking up to a chill that cut through her thin coat. She reached for Tristan, who whimpered in his sleep, teeth chattering. The blanket was no match for the cold. They tried to warm each other up, tiny bodies pressed close in the darkness. Ari whispered to Tristan that Mommy would be back soon, but hours passed. The silence outside was deafening. Back in the apartment, Kimberly stirred only once, fumbling for her phone and seeing it was past 5 a.m. She glanced at Sean, snoring softly, then rolled over and went back to sleep. Outside, frost coated the inside of the windows. The children huddled close, lips turning blue, movement slowing. They were slipping. At 9 a.m. the sun was up, but the cold had not lifted. Mrs. Edna, 77 years old, stepped outside her unit to throw away some trash. Her arthritis made each step painful, and she cursed under her breath as she neared the dumpster. Then she noticed something. The same gray sedan had been parked there since the night before. She moved closer, squinting through the frosted windows. What she saw made her heart stop. 2 small bodies in the back seat, barely moving. She banged on the window. Nothing. "Jesus, help me," she whispered, and then grabbed her phone. 911. "What's your emergency?" "There's babies in this car," she said. "They not moving." Within 48 hours of Kimberly James' arrest, her mugshot had swept across the internet like wildfire. Lips chapped, eyes blank, hair in disarray. Her face became a symbol of shock, disgust, and heartbreak. "She always said she wanted to be free," said one of her old high school friends, shaking her head. She didn't want the life her mom lived, raising kids, staying home. Kimberly always wanted to party, to move, to breathe without responsibilities. Her former pastor released a statement expressing sorrow, but not shock. "We tried to guide her. We tried to help, but sometimes people don't want to be saved." Even her family distanced themselves. Her aunt told reporters, "We loved her, we really did. But this leaving babies to freeze while she went off with some man, we don't recognize her anymore. That's not the Kimberly we grew up with." Her mother, Patricia, had been the last one to hold Kimberly's life together. Now, with Patricia gone, no one remained willing to defend her. The rest of the family released a joint message. "We stand with the children. Kimberly's actions are indefensible. We pray for healing." Kimberly's ex, the father of her older children, wasn't surprised either. When asked for comment, he simply said, "I thank God every day I got my kids out when I did. I tried to warn people, but no one listened." As the days passed, Kimberly's name faded from trending hashtags, but her story left a scar, one that would take years to forget, if it was ever forgotten at all. The courthouse was packed. 6 months after Kimberly James's arrest, her trial began, drawing in local reporters, child welfare advocates, and even everyday people who just wanted to see justice served. The room buzzed with anticipation. But when the doors closed and testimony began, a chilling silence fell over the courtroom. The prosecution wasted no time laying down the facts. 2 toddlers, ages 3 and 4, left alone in a freezing car for 14 hours. Temperatures had dropped below freezing. The car ran out of fuel. The heater died. No supervision. No one checked on them. Ladies and gentlemen, the lead prosecutor began pacing slowly. This wasn't just neglect. This was abandonment. Kimberly James made a choice, a series of choices to leave those children behind while she got high and laid up with her boyfriend, and it nearly cost those babies their lives. They brought evidence, time-stamped footage from a nearby security camera showing Kimberly and Sean entering the apartment just after 8 o'clock p.m. No return until nearly 10 o'clock a.m. the next morning. Photos of the interior of the car showed the children bundled in one thin blanket, their water bottles nearly empty, snack wrappers scattered like breadcrumbs, blank stares, bluish lips, and small fingers too stiff to move. Witness after witness took the stand. Paramedics who described how close the children were to hypothermia, pediatric doctors who explained the trauma of cold exposure, and even the neighbor, Mrs. Edna, who broke down as she recounted finding them. She looked so small, Edna said of the little girl, just staring through the glass, not moving. I knew something was wrong. The prosecution also read text between Kimberly and Sean. One message from Kimberly read, "They good, I gave them chips and water. We just need tonight." Another from Sean to a friend read, "Kim left them in the car again." SMH. She say they'll be fine. It was enough to make even seasoned jurors shift in their seats. Kimberly's defense painted a different picture. Her attorney described a woman spiraling, grieving the loss of her mother, unemployed, isolated, and emotionally unstable. She made a mistake, yes, her lawyer said, but it was not out of malice. Kimberly James was overwhelmed. She was broken, and she didn't have anyone left to turn to. They emphasized that her mother, Patricia, had been her lifeline. When Patricia passed away, Kimberly lost her anchor. A psychologist testified that Kimberly showed signs of depression, unresolved trauma, and substance dependency. She wasn't thinking clearly, the expert explained. Her brain was in survival mode, not parenting mode. Kimberly herself took the stand. She wore a plain gray dress, her hair pulled back, her face bare. She cried throughout her testimony. "I didn't mean to hurt them," she said softly. "I just needed a moment. I thought the car would stay warm. I thought they'd be okay. I didn't know it would get so cold. I didn't know. I'm sorry." But the prosecution rebutted sharply. Kimberly knew exactly what she was doing. The DA said this was not a one-time incident. This was part of a pattern. Friends and family warned her. Neighbors had concerns, and she ignored every single red flag. Then it was Sean Rick's turn. His attorney tried to distance him from the act. Mr. Rick was under the impression that the children were being watched. He claimed he was not the primary caregiver. He trusted Kimberly, but the jury heard otherwise. Prosecutors introduced phone data and witness testimony confirming that Sean had full knowledge the children were in the car. He joked about it. He did nothing. Negligence is not just failing to act, the prosecutor said. It's seeing danger and walking away. After nearly 2 weeks of emotional testimony, the jury was sent to deliberate. They returned after just 2 days. Kimberly James was found guilty on all counts: felony child endangerment, criminal negligence, and attempted manslaughter. The judge handed down a sentence of 20 years in prison without the possibility of parole. She didn't cry when the verdict was read. She stared straight ahead, jaw tight, eyes empty. Sean Rick was sentenced to 12 years for criminal negligence and reckless endangerment. Neither offered final words. Neither showed much emotion as they were led away in cuffs. In the gallery, some wept quietly. Others nodded in quiet agreement. A few hugged each other. The general feeling in the room was not triumph, but relief. Though the trial was over, the scars would last a lifetime. For 2 innocent children, it was a miracle they survived. For Kimberly and Sean, the price of their selfishness was now carved in court records and prison bars. Some stories end with justice. Others end with healing. But this one ends with a warning. What happened to Ari and Tristan wasn't just the result of one bad night. It was a slow unraveling, a life slipping out of control, one poor decision at a time, and two small children nearly paid the ultimate price. Kimberly James told police, "I gave them food. I gave them water. I left the car running." But parenting doesn't stop at snacks and idling engines. It requires presence, protection, sacrifice. And somewhere along the way, Kimberly stopped giving any of that. It's easy to point fingers, but this tragedy forces us to ask hard questions. How many people saw the signs and said nothing? How many times did the system miss the red flags? And how many children right now are sitting alone in silence, hoping someone notices? Kimberly wasn't a monster in the traditional sense. She was a woman drowning, grieving, reckless, irresponsible, and desperate to escape the weight of motherhood she never truly embraced. But in trying to escape, she abandoned the only two people who couldn't escape her. Her boyfriend, Sean Rick, didn't care enough to intervene. He saw those babies in the back seat and shrugged. That shrug nearly cost them their lives. And now both Kimberly and Sean will spend years behind bars. Two lives forever changed by a single night of selfishness. But the ones who matter most, the children, they survived thanks to a watchful neighbor. Thanks to a 911 dispatcher who acted quickly. Thanks to a community that rallied, even if too late. Today, Ari and Tristan are in foster care. They're recovering slowly. Physically, they're okay. Emotionally, the road ahead will be long, but they're alive. And sometimes that's enough to begin again. At the Crime Hour, we don't just tell these stories to shock you, we tell them to remind you. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. When a child is in danger, speak up, even if it's uncomfortable, and when life seems too quiet, listen closely. Someone might be crying behind closed doors. Thank you for watching. What do you think about this case? Was justice served? Could this have been prevented? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more real stories that need to be heard. Stay alert, stay safe, and stay with us.